Welcome and thanks for joining us today on a Sales Leadership Webinar Series Part 2. So today's topic is how to be a real success. Today, Israel will cover the most important key, leadership. What successful leaders do to remain at the top, how to lead others successfully to where you have gone and beyond. So I'll go ahead and let Mr. Greene take over from here to start the webinar. Over to you, Mr. Israel.
Thank you. Wow, the final week. This time has absolutely flown by. As always, thank you for having me and such a warm welcome. I greatly appreciate it. To everyone on the call, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you so much for joining us on the final week of this month-long webinar series. As Carity mentioned, my name is Israel Greene. I'm a certified speaker, leadership teacher, and coach with the John Maxwell team. For those of you that may not be familiar with who he is or our team, we are one of the largest leadership organizations in the world. John Maxwell has been named as the leadership guru. He has been dubbed as the #1 leadership expert by organizations such as the American Management Association and Business Insider. We have over 16,000 members spanning across 140 countries. It's a very, very large group. Collectively, he and I have written 112 books on leadership and personal growth, 112 books on leadership and personal growth. Yep, it's a pretty amazing number. He's written 111 and I've written 1. Now, granted, he has about 35 or 40 years on me, so I've got a little bit of catching up to do, but I do have some time. But what I do have is the pleasure of being able to share his content to other leaders just like yourselves. Now, for those of you that have joined us in the past few weeks, you know the routine. I like to kick off every session with 2 questions. But prior to that, I want to quickly recap last week. This week's series is part 2 to the last week's series of how to be a real success. And we discussed the word real as an acronym, standing for the 4 key elements that are vital to being a success. The R stands for relationships. The E stands for equipping your team and those around you. And the A stands for attitude. And it spoke to how our attitude starts with us and is a catalyst for much of the success of our days. Now, back to those 2 questions. For those of you that are new, when I do these trainings, either live or web-based, I like to kick off the session by always asking 2 questions at the start. Number 1 is, who wants results? Very basic question. As a leader, it's all about producing results. Now, the second question is the most important question that I like to ask, and it's, what is your intention during this hour of your time? Now, I'm sure when I asked the first one, if we were all in the room together, almost every single hand would go up. But it's really that second question that I want you to think about for a moment. What is your intention for this hour of time, this 45, 50 minutes? And I challenge you to be very, very clear on that answer. Write it down and take action on it. Now, I'm going to share a little bit of a secret with you. One of the biggest things that distinguishes the leaders from the rest of the pack, and the major difference between those that crush it and those that don't, is that the ones that crush it are action takers. They are really powerful action takers. Even if it's an imperfect action, they are the ones that get farther ahead than the ones that take no action at all. So as we go through this session, whether you're with us for just today or you were with us last week, I want you to think about those moments and those opportunities where you can take action on the content that you learn here today and the principles and add value to others and produce results as a leader. All right, so jumping right in, leadership. Now, we've talked about 3 of the 4 vital areas for you and me to be successful in our lives, but there is one more. You see, it's not only my relationships, my ability to get along with people. It's not only my equipping of training of others that's going to help me multiply my vision. It's not only my attitude that will help me overcome very difficult times, but it's also the L in real. And that L stands for leadership. Now, what I've discovered, and this is a fact, everything rises and falls on leadership. Everything. Your ability and my ability to lead others is absolutely essential and paramount for our success. Now, keep in mind, always remember, as we go through this content, tweeting out at Zoho CRM and also hashtag sales leaders. If you hear some great content for that special gift that Zoho is awarding to the top 10 tweets. So make sure that you get those tweets out there if there's anything that resonates with you. Also, in the bottom right-hand corner of your chat box, you should have a handout in there as well, so that you can download the handout and follow along. So I love to play golf. And one of my favorite stories is a golf story, but it's also a leadership story as well. And I'm horrible, but I love to play. In fact, I'm so bad that this leadership story could actually be about me, in all honesty. Now, there are two guys that set out on the first tee. They're playing golf for the day, and these guys are horrible. I mean, absolutely terrible. And they're so bad that they should even be banned from the golf course, period. One guy's so bad, he actually has what I call a kicking wedge in his bag, and it's where the ball will roll up under a bush and he kicks the ball out to wherever he wants to go, or he throws it out to wherever he wants it. These guys are just horrible. So they get on the golf course and they basically tee up. And on the first hole, the first guy hits it, and to his surprise, it goes straight down the fairway about 200 yards. And he's so excited, he's bragging to his friends like, man, I've never hit the ball like that in my life. It's in the middle of the fairway. He talks to his buddy all excitedly, and he's walking down the fairway, and he gets down there to the ball, a couple of hundred yards down. And not only is the ball in the fairway, but much to his surprise, it's rolled up on about a 4-inch anthill. And he's in the middle of the fairway, his ball is teed up, and as he steps up to take another swing at it, he sees it, and he's amazed, and basically grabs his 3-wood out, swings as hard as he can, and he knocks about 2 inches off of that anthill. In that anthill are several thousand ants. He killed about 5,000 of those ants with that first swing. Now, the miracle is the anthill went from about 4 inches down to 2 inches, and the ball stayed right on top of it and is still perfectly teed up. This guy looks at his buddy and says, oh my goodness, I got a second chance. Swings once again as hard as he can, and he misses the whole ball again. Now, the anthill started with about 10,000 ants. The first swing took about 5,000 ants. The second swing kills 4,098 ants. 2 ants are left. Now, this is a true story. 2 ants are left. One ant says to the other ant, I don't know about you, but if we're going to survive, we better get on the ball. Now, that's the same with leadership. As managers, supervisors, future leaders, if we are really going to be successful, if we're really going to survive, we have to learn how to get on the ball and learn how to lead. So right off the bat, let's talk about the most difficult thing in leadership, self-leadership. The toughest person to lead is always yourself. I'm going to say that again. The toughest person to lead is always yourself. At workshops, I get the question, what is the toughest thing about leadership? What is the biggest leadership problem that I've ever had? And tell me, one of the hardest things about leadership. And I always say me. I'm the biggest leadership challenge that I have. There was an MBA student going through a leadership course, and he said, you know what? I love these leadership principles. These are great, but I'm just a student. I don't have anybody to practice on. Who can I lead? And my answer is you. Always start with leading yourself. If you wouldn't follow yourself, why should anyone else follow you? The toughest person I have to discipline is me. The toughest person that I have to make sure that does the right thing at the right moment is me. The toughest person I have to motivate and to work out and eat healthy is myself. Leadership always begins, and the credibility of leadership is built upon leading myself well. Never ask people to do something you wouldn't do. Never ask your people to go somewhere where you wouldn't go. Never ask your people to make a commitment that you wouldn't be willing to make yourself. The influence and the power of leadership is in the visualization of people seeing you leading by example. So here are 4 keys to leading yourself well. Number 1 is learn followership. Bishop Fulton Sheen stated, civilization is always in danger when those who have never learned to obey are given the right to command. I'm going to say that again. Civilization is always in danger when those who have never learned to obey are given the right to command. Only a leader who has followed well knows how to lead others well. Leaders who have not followed well seem to carry with them these four negative characteristics. One, they're prideful. Two is they're unrealistic. Three is they're rigid. And four is they're autocratic. Learn followership. Think about leaders who have observed that and have never followed, and if they meet these four characteristics. Leaders in today's society, think about them. If they've never followed anyone, are they prideful? Are they unrealistic? Are they rigid? Are they autocratic? And I think your answer is going to be absolutely. Second thing on the list to develop your self-leadership is develop self-discipline. To demonstrate self-discipline, that means we consistently make good decisions, take the right action when needed, and refrain from wrong action. To do anything other than this is to lose control of ourselves. Third on the list is practice patience. I struggle with this one a great deal. Leaders I know tend to be impatient. They look ahead, they think ahead, and they want to move ahead. They can be great, and it's been said that being one step ahead makes you a leader, but being 50 steps ahead makes you a martyr. As a leader, we have to remember that the goal is not to cross the finish line first, it's to take the people across the finish line with us. And because of that, we have to deliberately slow our pace and wait on the people, connect with others, and enlist our team to help fulfill the vision overall. And the final thing is seeking accountability. People who lead themselves well, they know a secret. And that secret is they can't trust themselves. Now, you may think this sounds crazy, but that's the truth about it. Good leaders know that power can be seductive, and they understand their own fallibility. To be a leader and deny this is to put yourself in danger. Lack of accountability in your personal life will lead to problems in your public life. Seeking accountability, especially for leaders, oftentimes takes places in stages. And the four stages, if you're cognizant of them, the four stages, as you continue to grow as a leader, it starts out with stage one. This is the stage where we don't want advice. We don't want it at all. Stage number two is we don't object to advice, but we don't seek it out, but we don't object to it. Stage three is we welcome advice. We go out and we seek it out. We ask those around us, members on our team, our peers. The fourth is we actively seek advice. And the fifth is we often follow the advice given to us. Most wrong actions come about because people are not being held accountable early enough. Leading yourself well means you hold yourself to a higher standard of accountability than others do. And this is because you're held responsible not only for your actions, but you're also held responsible for the actions of the people that are on your team. Always remember, leading is a trust and not a right. There's a saying that I love, and it says, when you see a good man, think of emulating him or her. When you see a bad man, examine their heart. When Harry S. Truman became president of the United States, Sam Rayburn, and who was the Speaker of the House at the time, he pulled Truman aside as a new president, and he said to him, from here on out, you're going to have tons of people that are going to be surrounding themselves with you. And they're going to try to put a wall around you and will cut you off from any ideas but their own. And they're going to tell you that you're a great man. They're going to tell you their ideas are the best, and they're going to tell you how great you are, Harry. They're going to tell you that you are a great man, but you and I know that ain't true. The point is, stay close enough to the people so that it humbles you and it keeps you from realizing that you need to separate yourself to lead yourself well. Learn followership and have someone around you that will keep you humble. Thomas Wilson, former chairman of IBM, summed it up when he said, nothing so exclusively proves a man's ability to lead others as what he does from day to day to lead himself. Being honest with ourselves and what we are is the most difficult piece to leadership. It is difficult, and it's going to accelerate our growth whenever we recognize that. We are often our own worst enemies, and we get in our own way. Why is that? Because, you see, we don't see ourselves as we see others. And this is a huge problem. It goes back to the blind spots that I spoke about last week. Human nature seems to endow us with this ability to size everybody in the world up except for ourselves. A principle that I talk about in some of my presentations is the mirror principle. And this principle states that the first person we must examine is ourselves. If you don't look at yourself realistically, you will never, ever understand where your personal difficulties lie. And if you can't see them, you won't be able to effectively lead yourself. We treat others differently than ourselves, and this is where one of the first mistakes that we make. We usually have a different set of criteria for judging others. We judge others based on their actions solely, and that's it. Whereas we judge ourselves based on our intentions. And I guarantee anytime you try to go and you justify something, you will always lead with, well, my intentions were. If we believe, even if we do wrong, if we believe our intentions and our motives were good, then we aren't as hard on ourselves in those situations. So now that we talked about the most difficult part of leadership, I want to share with you a couple of leadership laws, 5 to be exact. And these laws are taken from one of the most popular courses that we have, and it's called the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And this is what the John Maxwell philosophy is built on. And these laws really cement and help people understand the foundation of leadership. So jumping in, law number 1 is the law of the lid. Now, the law of the lid states that leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Law of the lid. Leadership ability determines a person's level of effectiveness. Now, this is a very simple law, but it's a life-changing law. Very simple put, it states that my leadership ability is going to determine the growth of my organization, the growth of my company, the success in my life. Let me explain it to you like this. If my left hand were to represent my ability to lead, and I'm holding my left hand up and just kind of flat. If my left hand were to represent my ability to lead, and my right hand represents my department, my company, my organization, here's what I know. My organization will come under and up to, but never go any higher than the lid on my leadership. In other words, my leadership is the capacity or the stopper or the growth of my company. An organization simply cannot grow past the leadership lid of that organization. If you have a scale from 1 to 10 and your leadership lid is a 5, let's say that it's average, your organization will never exceed a 4. It's virtually impossible. And I can tell you right now, if you're a 5 as it relates to ability and relates to skills, and your organization is never going to be a 7 or an 8, not even a 5. 5s don't lead 7 and 8s. 5 leads 3, 2s, and 1s. A good example is with McDonald's, the McDonald's brothers. It's the very same McDonald's restaurant that has served billions of people. 2 brothers had a dream, started a drive-in restaurant business that became a phenomenon in the 30s. I think it was around 34, 37. Over several years, these brothers expanded the business, they grew it, they changed their menu and their delivery method along the way, and they had much success at the time. Now, while they enjoyed a great deal of success, capping out at an annual revenue of roughly about $350,000 a year, which back then was no small number during that time, but that was as far as they could take the business. And in 1952, they attempted to grow the business by franchising it out, and they failed miserably. And the reason was simple. They lacked the leadership skills that were necessary to make a larger enterprise effective. They knew about profits, they knew about making systems efficient, and they knew about how to effectively manage their business, but they couldn't grow it beyond that. Now, in walks Ray Kroc. And for those of you that are familiar with this story, you may have seen the movie, The Founder, and this with Michael Keaton. It was released a couple of years ago. When Ray comes on the scene and took over, within 4 years, a 4-year period, he was able to open an additional 100 restaurants. 5 years after that, he opened another 500 restaurants. Today, that company has opened more than 31,000 restaurants in 119 countries. Leadership ability, or more specifically, the lack of leadership ability, was the lid on the McDonald's brothers' effectiveness. Now, going back to that example where your lid is a 5, obviously, if you are a 5, you're going to have a company as a 3 or 4. Now, what would happen if you learn to commit yourself? What would happen if you commit yourself, as Earl Nightingale once said, you committed yourself 1 hour a day, every day for 5 years of your life, or even half of that amount of time? You would become an expert on that subject. What would happen if for 1 hour every day you spent 5 years learning leadership, going to conferences, reading books, listening to podcasts, and you went from a 4 to a 5 to a 6 to an 8? Your company would have no choice but to grow with you. You would double your company growth by just lifting your lid of leadership. Now think about if you're influencing leaders around you, what that would do. That's why it's so critical, as I mentioned last week, as part of equipping your team to stay ahead. As a leader, you have to make conscious effort to seek out growth opportunities so that you're constantly raising your lid. If not, your company or your team may be ready to grow and you could be the one that's holding them back. The lid on your leadership right now will determine the trajectory of your organization. So to better help you understand this leadership lid, I would challenge you to ask others to rate your leadership. Talk to your boss, talk to your spouse, 2 or 3 of your colleagues at your level, and 3 people that you lead about your leadership ability. Ask each of them to rate you on a scale of 1 being the lowest and 10 being the highest in each of the following areas: people skills, planning and strategic thinking, vision, and results. People skills, planning and strategic thinking, vision, and results. Ask your teams to rank you. Now, I want you to do this because I'm hoping that you capture these in your notes. Do the same for yourself and average the score and compare the two. Now, based on these assessments, is your leadership skill better or worse than you expected? Is there a gap between your assessment and that from that of others and your assessment of that of yourself? And if so, what is that cause of that? How willing are you to grow in that area of leadership? So I want to do a quick poll here because I'm curious. We often, with these blind spots, we often don't know how our team would actually rank us. So a quick poll here. How many of you believe that there would be a gap between your personal assessment and the assessment delivered by your team and peers? And if we can just take a moment and answer it. How many of you believe that there would be a gap if you did an assessment with your team and your peers to the assessment of yourself? We'll give it about 30 seconds. Give it another 10. If you take an assessment with your team, how many believe that it would be different than the assessment that you do for yourself? All right, closing it out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Wow. 95% say yes, there would be a gap. 95%. Think about those numbers for a moment. Why would that gap be there? How can you close that gap so that you guys are on the same page? Second on the list is law of process. Now, the law of process basically states that leaders develop daily and not in a day. This law says it takes time for you to become a leader. It takes time for you to get better and better. 2 of the most popular questions that people have is, number 1, are leaders born? And of course, the answer is yes, they are. They didn't just get here by spontaneous combustion. Now, obviously, they're asking if some people have it or if they don't. But there are people that are born with leadership qualities, just like athletes, dancers, anyone that has a natural talent. That's just a fact. But the second question is, what is the most difficult thing about leadership? And without hesitation, as I covered before, my answer is always self-leadership. But to get great at both of these requires time. In your notes, I have a statement that is so powerful. We overestimate the event and we underestimate the process. We overestimate the event and we underestimate the process. We overestimate what going to a conference will do for us. We overestimate what one lecture is going to do for us, and we automatically think if I'm just going to this conference and I'm going to read this book and everything all of a sudden is going to change. So much so, it's going to change. I'm just going to attend this one conference and come out, and I'm going to be a leader. And then we underestimate, we actually forget about the process that's intended to come after that. And it happens all the time. It's happening right now on this webinar, and it happened over the past 3 weeks. I'm going to come out of this thing and I'm going to be 100% successful. No, no, no. I've discovered that events are good for decisions, but it takes the process to develop a person. The development and growth is in the process, not in the moment, not in the conference, not in the book or the podcast. This is a major concept to understand because way too often we try to shortcut the process. You see, what's happened over time is we've developed this, what I would call a fast food mindset. And we go to the window and we think, I'm just going to order a leadership lunch today. One leadership lunch, we walk up to the counter, one leadership lunch, supersize, please. And we put it in a sack and we eat it on our drive home or going into the office on the highway. And we think, man, when I get through with this lunch, I'm going to learn how to lead. But somewhere along the lines, organizations have tried to microwave leaders. They think I need 5 leaders. They go out and they find 5 people and they put them in the microwave and press, zap, all of a sudden, you've got your leaders. They come out and they say, wow, only to find out that you can't microwave a leader. The reality is we have too many microwave leaders that are out there right now, which is why we have so many Pop-Tarts walking around trying to lead organizations. So we need to stop microwaving leaders and start giving these individuals the time, the tools, and the mentoring and the encouragement that they need to succeed. We need to invest the energy and the effort and the knowledge, all of these things that take time to implement. The secret of our success is discovered in our daily agenda. We over-exaggerate yesterday, and we overestimate tomorrow, and we underestimate today. Intentional living. We over-exaggerate yesterday and we overestimate tomorrow. If I can just get it done tomorrow, it'll be great. Everything's going to be good. And we underestimate what we can do right now in this moment. I encourage you in your leadership development to not do that. Take one day at a time. We have to be intentional in our activity to maximize our time. If you can implement what you can do today, tomorrow is going to take care of itself. To drill this law home, I want you to understand the key differences between an event and a process. Now, in an event, it's great. It encourages decision. It motivates people. It's a calendar issue. It challenges people. And it's easy because all you have to do is show up. Now, on the flip side of that coin, a process encourages development. It matures people. It's a culture issue. It changes people. It's difficult because it requires action. The word that I mentioned in the beginning that separates the champions is action. If I need to be motivated to take steps forward, then I'll attend an event. But if I want to improve, then I'll engage in a process and stick with it. Now, people often ask, what do leaders do different? What do successful leaders do differently than everyone else around them? So here are 5 things that successful leaders do differently. Number 1 is leaders challenge the process. And you may be thinking, well, isn't that a little bit combative? No, it's your job as a leader to question the process. They always challenge the process. They are the first person to not be afraid to ask why. And it's like Simon Sinek speaks about, people don't buy in what you do, they buy why you do it. They are the first to say things need to change, they challenge. Second on the list is they inspire. They inspire shared vision. And the key word here is shared. They've taken the vision from me to we. They inspire shared vision, which does what? It creates buy-in. And anyone that's ever led a team and that's tried to do changes on the team, they know the most difficult thing is to implement change and to get that buy-in from those around them. Third on the list is they enable others to act. There is an enablement and an empowerment in great leaders. Fourth is they model the way. They understand the power of example. They understand that the greatest motivating principle in life is that people do what people see. They know that and they model the way. In other words, leaders live what they communicate. And the very last thing is they encourage. They encourage the heart. Leaders encourage, Napoleon said it best, leaders are dealers in hope. Remember, the ultimate measure of a leader is in their ability to touch your heart. Really quick, just in the chat box, is this good information for you? I want to make sure that we're all still active. You're with us. If this is good information, let me see you type yes. If you're getting something out of this, type yes in the chat box right now. All right, we got some yeses rolling in. So I know some people are still awake on the call. If you're not awake, wake up. This is good information right here. So next on the list, third law of leadership is the law of solid ground. The law states that trust is the foundation of leadership. Trust is the foundation of leadership. The most important thing for a leader to earn with his or her team is trust. To build trust, a leader must exhibit competence. He must exhibit connection and character. Character makes trust possible, and trust makes leadership possible. So how do leaders earn this trust and respect with their team? They do so by making sound decisions, by admitting their mistakes, and by putting what's best for their followers and the organization, and by putting aside their personal agenda. A few questions to think about as you measure this law in your own life. How trustworthy would your followers say that you are? How do you measure their trust? How do you develop that character? Things that you can do to ensure that you're building the trust and developing your character is, number one, admitting that you're wrong whenever you are. Number two is being truthful even when it hurts. And the third thing is, don't play politics. In the office, there is so much politics going on. Don't play politics. Make your wrongs right. And if you've lost someone's trust, work to gain it back, regardless of how long it takes. And always remember, it's not on the individual to give trust, but it's on you to earn it. Fourth law of leadership is the law of navigation. And now this law states that anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. Anyone can steer a ship, but it takes a leader to chart the course. I don't know if any of you have ever been in a sailboat, but I took a trip once, and the captain of this sailboat, he let me get behind the wheel for a short period of time, and he looked terrified. And I would take the wheel, and the captain would stand beside me and try to share some tips with me about sailing. Meanwhile, we would be all over the place, and he would just kind of adjust the sails, account for the wind, and do all these things that sailors do. Now, obviously, I wasn't charting the course. The boat wasn't staying on course. It was going ahead, obviously, but it wasn't because I was behind the wheel. There were other people who understood sailing, understood the details, the intricacies, who were in the process oriented. They understood the steps that it took to get from point A to point B. You see, when we talk of leadership and we think of the law of navigation, there are some of us that are like big picture people. We get behind the wheel, we can see the destination, it's way out there, but we don't really get into the weeds. We don't really understand the process that it takes day by day, step by step, to get to where we need to go. And it's necessary to have people around us to help us with these steps. One of the things to remember is with these laws, you don't have to necessarily be good or strong in every one of them. It's a fact, and you won't be, and that's totally fine. There are going to be some that you do well and some that you don't, and that's okay. One of the main reasons to develop a team is that they complement us and we can leverage their strengths. The great leaders are like a quarterback on a football team. They don't have to run the ball every single time. They don't get paid to know. They don't get paid to do that. What they get paid for is to know who to give the ball to at the right moment that's going to yield the biggest return on their investment at that point in time. The law of navigation is all about that fact. It's all about the fact that people we bring around us, that they can help us day by day, and we add value to them and they add value to us. No, the law of navigation is all about people that we bring around us, but it doesn't just stop there. It's about planning ahead. It's about navigating the process. It's about doing the right things today so that you can get the right destination tomorrow. And I've discovered that some of the best leaders, it's basically, no one's going to lead super well. Maybe they manage well, but they may not lead well. And then make no mistake about it, there is a distinct difference between management and leadership. And what you're going to find that as a leader, You're usually going to lean more to one side than the other. You may manage better than you lead, or you may lead better than you manage, and that's fine. There are going to be good managers that manage fairly or that lead fairly well, and vice versa. You don't usually have them both with the same strengths. So the law of navigation is the closest to what I call management leadership. And it basically says if you don't take care of today correctly, if you don't manage the day-to-day details of life, you won't be successful in the long run. Now, if you don't do this piece well, that's okay, like I said. Just you have to bring those around you that can help raise your leadership lid in that area. You become their cheerleader because all of a sudden you know who to hand the ball off to, and they can go further with you than you can go by yourself. The law of navigation will allow you to remain focused. Controlling your direction is better than being controlled by it. Understanding this law, it's going to allow you to see the whole trip in your mind. Before you leave the dock, having a vision for the destination, what it takes to get there, and who needs to be on the team to be successful. But understand, your team will be looking to you as the captain to help them avoid the icebergs, the pitfalls, the landmines that are around them. Leroy Imes, he was a navigator and an author, and he says, a leader is one who sees more than others see, who sees farther than others see, and who sees before others do, and who does before others do. As you think of the law of navigation, think of the following two words: plan ahead. Now, this will become the blueprint as you navigate your way through leadership and managing your team. Plan ahead. Plan ahead is an acronym, and the P stands for predetermine a course of action. L is to lay out your goals. A is adjust your priorities. N is notify key personnel. A is allow time for acceptance. H is to head into action. E is to expect the problems. And A is always to point to success. And D is daily review your plan. Plan ahead. So to ensure that you're moving in the right direction when applying the law of navigation to your life, a major question to reflect on is, number one, do you make it a regular practice to reflect on your positive and negative experiences weekly? Do you set up a time to reflect on a weekly basis? Put it on your calendar like it's an appointment with yourself, and keep it every single week. Going to do another quick poll question here because I'm very curious. Who sets time aside and schedules time on a weekly basis to reflect on the week and what took place? Who sets time on their calendar to reflect on what took place earlier in the week, both bad and good? And you keep that appointment on a weekly basis, and you plan for the next week based off of some of that information. We'll give it about 20 more seconds here. Ten, 9, 8. The question is, do you plan ahead? Do you schedule time on your calendar so that you are doing the right things and can reflect on your time? Closing the poll. Wow. 65% say I do not schedule time on my calendar for reflection. 65%. If you don't reflect on your week, how are you able to determine what went right and what went wrong so that you can continue to do those things or stop doing them or figure out where your attention needs to be? I cannot stress enough how important this activity is on a regular basis. You're going to benefit from it after 1 week, I promise you. So I would recommend over the next 30 days, putting 20 minutes or 30 minutes on your calendar, and it can be during lunch, but uninterrupted time on your calendar, and actually scheduling time for yourself to reflect. Write it down, figure out what's working and what's not working. All right. Next is the next law. Law number 5 is the law of buy-in. Now, the law of buy-in says people buy into the leader and then they buy into the vision. The law of buy-in, people buy into the leader and then they buy into the vision. It's been said that the leader finds the dream and then the people, and the people find the leader and then the dream. During workshops, I try to engage with the audience as much as possible during the course of it and before and after. And I have these conversations with some of the attendees, and they talk to me about their vision of their companies and their mission statements. And they're always so excited. And inevitably, they always ask, do you think my people will follow me and buy into the vision? Do you think they'll walk with me? And it's always interesting conversation to have. And I listen, and they're so excited about it. And I usually ask one simple question back to them. Have they bought into you? And then I'm quiet. Have they bought into you? Now, what happens next is they usually pause and have this puzzled look on their face. How you answer that question will determine if they will buy into your vision. If they bought into you, then they will buy into your vision. If they aren't sure about you, if they don't trust you, if they don't like you, then when you lay out your vision, they're not going to buy into it. You have a lot of work to do to get them to buy into you and then to buy into your vision. They aren't going to jump on that journey with you. You don't sell your vision to your team first. You have to get them to buy into you first. Most leaders don't understand this concept, and they put the cart before the horse. Now, despite how great or worthy you think your cause is, people don't at first follow worthy causes. They follow worthy leaders who promote causes that they can believe in. So the question is, every day, what are you doing to invest in your people in such a way that they are buying not only into what you're wanting to teach them, but into you? Do they sense your genuineness, your authenticity? Do they have a sense for your concern for them? Do they ask those three questions? Do you care about me? Are things going to get better? Do they know that you really put them first, that you really want to add value to them? And I'm sure you've hired some smart people around you. That's not even the question here. So they can all tell when a leader is in it for themselves and when the leader is in it for the people. People will buy into you when you buy into the people. It's wonderful when people believe in the leader. It really truly is. It's great. But it's even more wonderful when the leader believes in the people. People have to trust you. Understand, every message that people receive, it's filtered through the messenger. It's filtered through the messenger that delivers it. And what I mean by this is if you consider the messenger to be credible, then you believe the message has value. You have to have that credibility with those that you are attempting to get to follow you. The thing to remember as a leader, your success is measured by your ability to actually take the people where they need to go. But you can do that only if the people first buy into you. That's the reality of the law of the buy-in. Next, the last lesson on leadership that I want to leave you with. And this one is very basic. Never work a day in your life. Never work a day in your life. Now, you may be sitting there thinking, what in the heck is he talking about? Am I telling you to quit your job? Please do not walk into your boss's office and say, you know what, Israel, this leadership guy, he told me to come in here and quit my job and never work a day in my life. Do not do that. I'm not saying to quit your job. What I am saying, though, is following your passion is the key to finding your potential. You will not achieve the latter without pursuing the former. When a person is operating without passion, their life can become just mundane and monotonous. Everything shifts from, oh man, I have to, and nothing is, I want to. And there's a distinct difference there. Passion is going to be the fuel that keeps you going as a leader. When others quit, it's going to push you through the toughest of times and keep you running when you don't think you have anything else left in your tank. Passion is an incredible asset for anyone, but even more so for leaders. Talent is never enough to enable us to reach our potential. You need more than just talent. Opportunity will never get us to the top by itself. There was a gentleman once said, don't put live eggs under dead chickens. Don't put live eggs under dead chickens. Now, you may be thinking, what in the hell is live eggs and dead chickens? What does that have to do with leadership? But that is exactly what opportunities, which are the eggs, are to the people with passion, or without passion, which are the dead chickens. They simply will not hatch. Knowledge can be a great asset, but it won't make us all that we can be. A great team can fall short If a team starts out strong but has a weak, passionless leader, the team will follow suit and they will fail. There was a study of business school graduates, and they basically took the careers of 1,500 business school graduates that were tracked from a period of 1960 to 1980. And from the beginning, the graduates were grouped into two categories. Category A, and it consisted of people who said they wanted to make money first so that they could work and do what they really wanted to do later. So keep that in mind. Category A, the people that wanted to make money first to do what they were able to do later. Then you got category B. Category B basically says they pursue their true interests first so that they were sure that the money would eventually follow. So category B, chasing the dream and the passion first because they know the money's going to follow later. Guess what percentage fell into each category? Out of the 1,500 graduates in the survey, the money now category A comprised 83%, which was about 1,245 people. Category B, which were the risk takers, made up about 17%, which I think it came out to be about 255 graduates. Now stay with me for a moment. After 20 years, there were 101 millionaires in the group. 101 millionaires. Out of that 101, only one came from category A. Only one came out of the 1,245 people. 100 came from category B out of the 255. So I want to do one last polling question. How much passion do you have for what you do today? For your current work, how passionate are you about your current work? Does your job feel more like work or play? That's the poll. What percentage of your time would you consider your job to be enjoyable? What percentage of your time would you consider your job to be enjoyable? 90% or above. If that's the case, you're in the sweet spot, you need to be celebrating. 75 to 89%, in that spot, you need to be making some minor adjustments to align with your passion. 50 to 74%, you need to make major adjustments. And 49% or less, you need a job or career change. And we're going to give this one a few minutes, or not a few minutes, about a minute or so. What percentage of time do you enjoy your job? How much passion do you have for what you do today? I love doing this particular poll because it is so revealing in that situation. We'll give it about 10 more seconds. We've got a few votes still coming in. What percentage of your time are you passionate? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we will close the poll. 12%, 90% or above, need to be celebrating. 56%, which is a pretty good number, is 75 to the 89% mark. Making a few adjustments would probably get you up to that 90%. 24% needs to be making major adjustments. 24% of the group says that between 50 to 74% of the time, they do not enjoy what they do. And then there's 8% that is 49% or less. So having this information, how will it impact you? What will you be doing differently as a result of that? I have the honor of being able to do a great deal of mentoring, and one piece of advice that I always give young men and women is much like Simon Sinek's book, Start with Why. And I tell people to seek out their purpose and find your why. Seek out your purpose and find your why, because when you find your why, you will find your way. When you find your why, you'll find your way. So 4 elements to being a real success. Relationships, people will only go along with you if they can get along with you. Equipping, leaders take the vision from me to we. Attitude, there is no simpler way to put it. It is a choice. You must determine that. And leadership, because everything rises and falls on leadership. And that's how we all become a real success. I hope this session has added value to you today. And I want to thank you for your attentiveness, and thank you to Zoho for allowing me to be able to share this material with you. And for the past 4 weeks, it's truly been an honor and a privilege to be your speaker over this course of time. If you have any interest of bringing any of the content that you've heard here today or last week into your organization, or you would like to learn more about me or the John Maxwell team, you can find my information here in the bottom right-hand corner. Please feel free to email me at info@israelgreene.com or visit our website, www.israelgreene.com. Also, if you're not already, take a moment and tweet out something that resonated with you during this session at Zoho CRM and hashtag sales leaders. Once again, tweet out something that resonated with you or something that you're going to apply at Zoho CRM and hashtag sales leaders for an opportunity to win a prize. Thank you again, and I look forward to chatting with you. If any of you contact me or have questions, and right now we're opening it up to questions.
So now we have come to the end of the session. Thank you very much, Israel, for the lovely presentation on leadership. So on behalf of Zoho and Israel, thank you each one of you who traveled along with us on Sales Leadership webinar series. Hope you found it useful, and all the very best for your sales leadership journey. So you can actually post your questions right now in the chat box, and Israel would love to answer the questions.
I'll tell you what, I'll ask a question of the group. From the laws that you guys heard today, and this was just 5 of the 21 that we normally teach on, which law resonated with you the most? We've got the law of the lid, we have the law of buy-in, we have the law of navigation, we have the law of process, and we have the law of solid ground. Law of buy-in, Tandisa, law of navigation, law of buy-in, got a couple for that one. Law of buy-in, okay. Trust is such a huge factor whenever you are trying to make a change in an organization. That is one of the biggest things that I've learned, but starting with why is going to be very, very helpful for you to overcome that and getting people to follow along and support you in your journey. Yep, so Tandisa, the question was, can I give you guys back the information that you asked people to grade you on over the course of for the self-assessment? Yep, just 1 second here. They are people skills on a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is going to be the lowest and 10 is going to be the highest. And you're asking them to rank you on people skills, how well you interact with others and getting things done, planning and strategic thinking, vision, and results. How do you communicate your vision to the group that they are able to buy into it? Are you good at getting results and getting the people to do what you need them to do? And that's what management is all about, getting things done through others. So those 4 components are, once again, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest, 10 being the highest. You're asking them to rank you on people skills, planning and strategic thinking, vision, and results. Also keep in mind, please do this in an anonymous manner. SurveyMonkey is probably the best way to do this. You can do that and they remain anonymous. That way they give you that honest feedback of yourself. How do you manage all that time to be a leadership, since I don't see the time in many tasks during the day? That's a great question. I wake up early and I go to bed late. And I just try to maximize any of those minutes where I would normally be spending either on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all these things that are time consuming, and you can get sucked in, especially on Facebook. You start out responding to someone, next thing you know, you stumble across some cute cat video, and all of a sudden it's an hour later and you've watched about 20 cats. That's, minimizing my time there. So you got to really figure out and carve that time away, just like you need to carve the time out to do the reflection, and treat it like almost like it's a business. And that's the way that I try to apply my day, is like my personal leadership component is a business for me. So my self growth, my personal growth, how much time do I allot per week to do that?
All right, it looks like everyone's questions have been answered. So meet you all soon on our next webinar series. Thank you very much for joining us.